Fresh every Tuesday
for MSPs around the world. This is Paul Green's MSP Marketing Podcast.
Hi there and welcome back to the show. Here's what I've got in store for you this week.
Hi, I'm Brian Hoppe. I have built an MSP up to 45 staff and also built and sold a second MSP. Join me on Paul's podcast where we talk about how to scale your MSP.
We're also going to talk about how to guarantee that you delight every single one of your clients by systemizing how to underpromise and overdeliver.
Paul Green's
MSP Marketing
Podcast.
Let's talk about a key member of your team who might actually be missing. You haven't got him yet, but you do need him if you're ever going to get anywhere with your marketing. In fact, his very appearance within your MSP shows that you are getting it right. His name is Big Mo, and he brings with himself big momentum. Now, I first heard the concept of Big Mo, big momentum, whatever you call it, reading a book called The Compound Effect. It's an amazing book. If you haven't read it or listened to it, because it is on Audible, please go and get it. Obviously, it's not about MSPs, but it could be, because it's talking about productivity and talking about getting into a flow and repeat things. In fact, one of the other key phrases I remember from that is the secret of success is not about doing 5,000 things really well. It's about finding a tiny number of things and doing them 5,000 times. And that is so the case with marketing. Because marketing, your MSP, it's a long game, and it's like rolling a stone down a hill. In fact, it's not really a stone, it's a massive rock. Think of a rock that's bigger than you, and you've got to get that started and get it going down the hill. So first of all, you've got to put your shoulder into it. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work to start to push that stone, and you're rocking back and forth, and the stone's rocking back and forth, and then eventually the stone reaches that tipping point and it starts to go down the hill. But it's a shallow hill, and it's a very, very slow roll of the stone. In fact, you have to keep pushing it and keep pushing it to keep it going. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to get it to that point where it reaches big momentum, or it achieves big momentum, and the hill gets steeper, and the rock starts to turn and turn and turn. It gets faster and faster. And believe me, at that point, no one is stopping it. Now, obviously, I'm not really talking there about a rock down a mountain. I'm talking about your MSP's marketing. It takes a lot of effort to get things going. You've got to really put your shoulder into it and push, and you won't see results at first. But eventually, you reach the tipping point where you start to see some momentum. You start to see some things happening. And then you have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and making sure the marketing continues, the rock continues, because eventually it builds up big momentum. The problem is that too many MSPs, they give up way too soon. They start doing some marketing, they'll throw themselves into LinkedIn, and then 2 months later they'll stop. Perhaps they'll take a vacation or a break or something, or maybe they'll just skip a week because they've just got out of the habit of it, and the momentum goes, because then that week becomes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and suddenly LinkedIn didn't work for me, or insert this marketing tactic here didn't work for me. Whenever someone says to me, oh, I tried that, it didn't work for me. With one or two minor exceptions like paid ads, for example, pay-per-click ads, there are in many instances times where that's not right for you. The same with SEO, search engine optimization. It's not right for every MSP in every marketplace. But other marketing tactics, they do work if you do them long enough. I mean, look at this podcast. We are about 4.5 years into this podcast. So we have put this podcast out every single week since November 2019, right? And I know that no one listened for the first year. They have now, because what happens is people discover the podcast and then they go back and they start at the beginning. Some people do, not everyone does. So we have lots of views on our sort of first 5-10 episodes. But when we first put them out in 2019, no one was listening. There was zero feedback. No one cared. But you know what? Me and my production team, it was just a guy called James at the beginning, and now it's James and Simon and Laura, and there's a whole team of us working on this podcast, and we all turn up every single week, and we've systemized doing this podcast. I record it ahead of time. I record guests ahead of time, and we're talking like weeks ahead of time. We've got a great production process, we've got a marketing process, and we've got big momentum on the podcast. And that's deliberate because it's a really important marketing channel for us, and we don't ever want to trip up and get it wrong. But that first year, there was literally tumbleweed. There was no one out there. We're having a similar thing right now with YouTube. So we have put in a massive amount of effort. It's the same team who work on podcasts, work on YouTube. And at the moment, we'll put out a video that perhaps takes 2 hours of filming time for me and either James or Simon who direct me remotely. Here in my studio, I'll put on props. We'll write scripts. We spend, it's 2 hours of filming. It must be at least 3 to 4 hours of scripting and probably another 4 hours or so of editing. So we're investing 10, maybe 12 hours into a YouTube video that's getting 60 views. And we've got like 800 subscribers. These are tiny, tiny little figures. But here's the thing, I'm not worried about it because I know if we keep putting out a video and we're working up to doing it every single week, we will grow that channel. That 800 subscribers will become thousands of subscribers, all MSPs. Those 60 views per video will become 600 views per video, 6,000 views eventually. It will grow because we will get big mo on it. LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn, just as I recommend that you should be. And right now I've got 9,000 followers on LinkedIn. And those are people who are, some of them are connected to me as well, and some of them will be getting my LinkedIn newsletter, but some of them are just following me. So, on LinkedIn, if you're a content creator, so you've switched on content creator in the settings, then you can be, people can just follow you and see the content that you put out there. 9,000 MSPs, that's pretty impressive, right? But that comes from Big Mo because we've been working on that since around about 2017. We've got big momentum on it. So what I suggest to you within your MSP is that if you set the right marketing strategy, you then commit to it for years and years and years. And let me give you the right marketing strategy to make it really simple. It's a super simple 3-step marketing strategy. We've built our service, the MSP Marketing Edge, around this. Very simple. Step number 1 is to build multiple audiences, typically LinkedIn and your email database. Step number 2 is then to build a relationship with those audiences, and you do that through content marketing, so putting out social media daily, sending out an email once a week, and sending out a printed newsletter once a month. And then the third step is you then convert those relationships into clients. And that's done by phoning those people up and just seeing how they're going. Well, is now the right time for you to have a chat with them? That is a great marketing strategy, but only if you commit yourself to it for like the next 5 years. And once you get Big Mo, by the way, be very, very careful not to accidentally show in the door. As I said to you, with our podcast, with YouTube, with our LinkedIn, not with YouTube yet, but with those things, we've got Big Mo. And we work very, very hard to make sure that we never, ever accidentally kill that momentum. For us, that means working ahead well, it means resourcing it well, it means communicating well. If I'm going away on holiday, someone is going to do the jobs that I normally do, and vice versa when my team are away. We work very, very hard to make sure that once Big Mo is in the building, we never let him out of the door. And you need to do exactly the same thing.
Here's this week's
Clever idea.
One of the smartest ways to always make sure your clients are always happy is to underpromise and overdeliver. But you need to build that into a system, because if you're kind of hoping that it happens or constantly having to chase your technicians to make sure it happens, well, it's not going to happen. Whereas if you've built it into a system, then it just happens. So what are some examples of how you would underpromise and overdeliver? Let's take, for example, a project. Let's say you're doing a migration project. Let's go with that. We're going with a migration project. So for example, it takes, let's say, 8 days, 8 working days to do this. So you would tell your client this takes 10 working days, and you would give them a project map or whatever it is that you give them that shows them 10 days. Now, there's 2 benefits for you of working those extra 2 days into that schedule. The first benefit is that if something goes wrong, and I'm not a technical person, but I'm sure that things go wrong all the time in migrations when you stumble across things you didn't know that you were going to be involved in migrating. Well, you've just bought yourself 2 extra days. So you can actually deliver on schedule, but still take an extra 2 days. Because it's 8 days, the client thinks it's 10 days, there's 2 days spare. It's good, right? But the other thing, and what we really want to do here, is for you to be able to go back to the client after 8 days and say, good news, we had spare resource within the business, so we threw them onto your migration at no cost to you. The upside of this is we've delivered it a day early, or we've delivered it 2 days early. And imagine if you were able to do that with every single project that you scheduled. That's really cool, right? Isn't it? Another thing that you could do to underpromise and overdeliver is to give your clients more than you promise. So just as an example, let's say you've bought them a new laptop, or they've asked you to buy them some new laptops. What you do at the same time is you buy them some monitors, and you find a way to subsidize those external monitors. So it might be that you say to, I'm just thinking that's probably a big cost. Let's say they buy laptops and they buy some external monitors. You go and buy some laptop docks. I don't know how much those cost. Let's say it's like $100 or £100 per laptop dock. So obviously you're losing a bit of margin, but you just build it in, right? And for you to turn up and say to them, right, here's your new laptop. It's all set up for you. Here's your external monitor. Hey, we just wanted to make your lives easy, so I hope you don't mind. We're not charging you for this. It's a free gift from us. We've got some laptop docks for you. Look, you just slide it in, ping, and it comes up on the monitor, right? That would be really cool. I mean, I know I would, as an end user, as a client, I would be delighted with that. And you know, you don't even have to go out of your way spending hundreds on kit for them. You can just find very simple ways to surprise your clients. And this is another way to underpromise and overdeliver. For example, what if a Friday afternoon, you just dropped in to a client with cakes, right? With donuts or with cakes. Nice, fresh ones. Not cheap, nasty shop-bought ones, but lovely, fresh cakes, fresh cupcakes, fresh donuts that you've just picked up from somewhere. What if someone has been put in a ticket yesterday to say their mouse was a bit sticky? They spilt something on it, their mouse is sticky, and you just turn up, or you or someone turns up at the office, and you make a big thing of, "Hi everyone, sorry to bother you." Obviously, you go with this if this is your personality to do this. "Sorry to bother you, but Dave, do you know that Dave spelled some Dr. Pepper on his mouse this week? I've got a new one." And you hold the new one up and you say, "Dave, here we go. It's on us because there's nothing worse than a sticky mouse," right? Something like that. And imagine, in fact, could you imagine systemizing? Every Friday you go around one of your clients, and they don't know that you do this every Friday. They think you've just dropped in on your way home with cakes or pizza or whatever it is that you're just dropping in. Cake's probably better than pizza. Can you see how really cool this would be? I tell you something else that you could do to underpromise. I nearly said underdeliver and overpromise there. Underpromise and overdeliver is to deal with small tickets really, really quickly. My doctor's surgery did this. Here in the UK, we have a thing called the NHS, the National Health Service, which is both amazing and terrible at the same time, because basically the demand on it has grown so fast and the funding hasn't grown as fast. So the whole system is creaking and, we have long delays. It's great. It costs us nothing. We pay a little tax for it, but it costs us nothing. Anybody can just turn up for any level of healthcare, in theory. But the downside is you wait a long time and, typically the smaller the item, the longer it takes. My local doctors has hired a paramedic. So a paramedic obviously is not a doctor, but is someone who's quite experienced, and this is an experienced paramedic, and his job is to be that kind of first line. What's the word I'm looking for? Triaging. He's triaging people and dealing with small queries fast. And they're getting through a ton of patients really quickly, because now instead of a doctor, a qualified general practitioner, having to see everyone as triage, they've put in a triage before the triage. Really smart. And this paramedic, I'm guessing, they've got safeguards in place to make sure he doesn't muck up. So they're now able to deal with quick things like, my daughter had a clicky knee. You know when you click, you bend your knee and it goes click, 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 click. And we went in and we saw the paramedic and it was all dealt with really quickly. And he said, well, we could do this, or I could refer you to the doctor, or you wait X number of months and come back to us. It's brilliant. And now the customer satisfaction with that doctors has gone up because they're just dealing with small things really fast. So whether you do that, or whether you, and of course, by the way, the MSP equivalent of that is hiring, I can't remember what it's called now, but hiring someone who's not a technician to answer the phones. A dispatcher. You hire a dispatcher to answer the phones and to deal with all of those small queries, because anybody can be trained to do password resets, add new users, basic stuff, right? So this is actually how you build capacity into your technicians, by having a non-technician dealing with the small stuff. That's the paramedic equivalent. So whether you do that or you drop off cakes on a Friday or whatever you do, you have to systemize it. And when you systemize it, it takes the stress out of it. If you've got a dispatcher sitting there, that's the system. The dispatcher answers the phone, the dispatcher triages it, that's the system. If you take cakes to clients, every Friday I go to a different client, or every other Friday or something like that, until you run out of clients, and then you maybe go and see prospects and do something like that. It becomes a system. You don't have to think about it, it just automatically happens. This, by the way, is why the word system is actually an acronym, and it stands for saves you stress, time, energy, and money. Let the system take the strain for you.
Paul's blatant plug.
I mentioned LinkedIn earlier and the fact that I've got around about 9,000 followers on LinkedIn. If you're not one of them and you'd like to connect to me or just follow me or get my LinkedIn newsletter, then you can easily find me. Just go into LinkedIn, type in Paul Green MSP Marketing. Sadly, there are lots of Paul Greens in the world. In fact, there's a Paul Green Shoes. Did you know that? It's like a shoe designer. There's a famous musician as well called Paul Green. In fact, I think, like School of Rock, that Jack Black film? I think it is the original one is called the Paul Green School of Rock. Anyway, regardless, you don't want to connect with those people on LinkedIn. Type into search Paul Green MSP Marketing. You'll find me. Let's connect on LinkedIn.
The big
interview.
Hi, I'm Brian Hoppe, and I am a CEO coach for MSPs.
And thank you so much for joining me on the show, Brian. So you are really one of those people who has been there and done that, and now you're taking that experience and helping other MSP owners to go where you went with your business. Tell us about your story. So how did you get into the tech world in the first place, and what have you done over the last, I guess it must be a couple of decades for you now?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. So I'm one of the rare people who actually went to school for it. So I got a business degree in IT concentration. So I knew what I wanted to do, and one of the rare people, it seems, that actually used their education. So I got started in the early 2000s in just like a two-man shop, and we were pretty quickly after that acquired by a family office, Forbes billionaire, who wanted to grow an IT company. So we grew that IT company for a number of years, up till about 2015, up to around 45 employees. And then, it kind of became like, hey, I'd like to maybe do this for myself as opposed to for somebody else. So I bought a small company, grew that for a little while, purchased another company, MSPs, specifically targeted towards banking and credit union industry. So built kind of a financial services MSP, and then sold that back in 2021. I had planned to do that for a longer period of time, but circumstances were just right at that point, and so decided to make the sale. Worked for the buyer for a little bit over a year after that, and now have been just working one-on-one with MSP CEOs for the last about a year.
Fantastic. That's a heck of a journey. Now,
Right.
the time that you spent running or working in an MSP for someone else, when you actually sort of came out of that and you thought, right, I'd like to do this myself, talk us through why you bought a company as opposed to just starting your own place.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So I think I decided I just didn't want to start from scratch. I consider myself on the Strengths Finder. I'm a maximizer. So starting from scratch is not necessarily in my strength, and so I decided, hey, I'm gonna buy something that's in place. It's pretty small. It was about five techs or so at the time, and so I've just felt like that was the right path for me as I kind of embarked on my journey on my own.
Yeah, and when you bought the other MSPs, did you sort of merge them all into one entity?
We did, yes. We took the best of both worlds and merged them together. Made one, got on all the same systems, processes, and all of that, and really use that for some cost savings and that kind of a thing. As you do, and merge the operations together.
Okay, so in a second, you and I are going to talk about scaling up any MSP. And I know you have an absolute ton of advice and information and structure that you would add to that. Before we do, let me ask you one last question about your own MSP that you owned. What would you say, well, let me ask you two. What would you say is was your biggest mistake that you made while you were growing that business? And B, what was the thing that you think you got right, which most other MSPs get wrong?
So starting with the biggest mistake. I think one of the things that, especially after purchasing the second company, we did not do a good job of cultivating the relationships with the customers on the front end of the company that we acquired. And so we had some issues in there with customer retention. I definitely take responsibility for that, but learned the lesson in that process that the customer relationship is absolutely the most important thing. And then the second part of that being a success. I think one of the big things that we did is that we really focused in on an industry, and we made that the kind of the center of what we did. So for me, that was the financial services, and that really enables you to know your customer and what the software they use, all of their needs, all of those kinds of things really, really well. And it really simplifies marketing also. I know most MSPs are very broad. They're not industry specific, and that can be okay too. But it did simplify a lot of things and really helped us grow and scale very well.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And, you're right. A lot of MSPs, they'll talk about having a vertical, and often it's the same verticals, isn't it? It's CPAs or accountants, lawyers, manufacturers. Everyone seems to be going after the same verticals, but very often it's a toe dipped into the water, and someone will look at their business and say, hey, I've got 3 lawyers already, so we've got a vertical. Let's go after that vertical. And they do a page on their website and put it in the navigation, and that makes it a vertical. And the reality is when you go all in on something, it's a completely different thing. And I've actually pulled this trick off myself. Obviously, I only work with MSPs, and I only do a very small, narrow piece of the marketing puzzle for MSPs. But I had a previous business which I sold in 2016 where we worked with veterinarians and opticians or optometrists and dentists here in the UK. And that was really cool because the actual work we were doing was identical for each of them, but we had 3 separate websites. We had 3 separate teams. We had 3 separate ways of talking to these people, but then all the work was flowing into one delivery team, and that was a really cool. That was a great lesson in how to get verticals right. I would love to see more MSPs really, really marry a market, and I know of a few that have, and those that know me well, who are doing this, who are listening to this right now. They know who I'm talking about, but it's very much the exception rather than the rule. Right, let's talk about scaling an MSP. So you've gone, as you say, I think you said you've got about 24, 23 years experience building someone else's business for them, building your own business, and now you're coaching MSPs. And I think that does give you such a sort of a broad depth of, or what's the phrase I'm trying to say here, Brian? A broad overview of what MSPs do, and also allows you to go deep into specific subjects. So what do you think are the most critical things that, let's say if you're an average MSP owner and you're at the sort of 2-3 tech stage right now, but you're ambitious and you really want to go for it and you really want to get up there to 5, 10, 15 techs, how create a business that runs without you, that thrives without you, and free yourself just to be leading that business and working on that business. What would you say are the critical things to put in place along the way?
Yeah, there's so many, and it's really unique for each MSP. So I'll start by talking about one of the things that I go through with my clients a lot is figuring out what is your unique ability, right? So as the owner, are you spending the time on the things that you're best at and the things that are going to push your business forward the most? We know most everybody kind of starts as a technical person, right? A technician. And it's that process of moving from doing work that other people can also do to doing the things that only you can do. And I talk to so many owners who are really stuck in the day-to-day, putting out fires, all of those kinds of things. And it takes kind of stepping back a little bit and saying, okay, what am I uniquely suited for as the owner? What's my highest and best use inside the company? And how do I free up my time, generally speaking, by finding good people to help in key areas in order to do those things that are the most important? And I think that's a big piece.
Yeah, no, I think it's a huge piece. But do you sometimes find that the MSP owner is, even though they acknowledge they've got to change, they're really reluctant to actually make that change happen when they're caught up doing everything? And B, do you sometimes find that the MSP owner actually realizes what they're best at is third line support, and they're going to have to find someone else to essentially help them grow the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the big thing. It's as owners, we have, we see certain things, and we also have a lot of blind spots. And most of the time it's the fact that it's a blind spot. I don't, as the owner, I don't know what really should I be doing, or what's really sucking up my time to keep me from doing the strategic things that I need to do to grow the company. And so absolutely. I mean, I think it's, part of it is having some help with that, right? Having somebody to be like, hey, let's reflect on where the time is going, what you're doing, and where you need to bring in that help to really get you on track.
Yeah, I think it's one of the hardest things for any business owner. I remember doing it in my first business. It was so hard. It was easy in the second business because I'd already done it. Just as I'm sure you found when you were growing your own MSP, right. As you hit situations that you'd already dealt with in the previous MSP, you're like, oh, I know what to do. It's not in knowing what to do. I know what to do. I've done it, and I know what the pitfalls are, and I know what success looks like. So it's so much easier. So what are some of the other critical success factors you think make a big difference?
You'd be surprised to hear how many MSP owners I talk to that have no idea where they want to go, right? They're like, I want to grow my business, and that's about it, right? So I start with vision. Where do we want to go? Let's look at a big, hairy, audacious goal. Let's look 10 years out, right? The BHAG. What do you want things to look like in 10 years? How do we crystallize that vision and really help you as the owner have a really crystal clear picture of what that looks like. So starting off with vision, and we also even look at things like, hey, what do you want your personal wealth to look like? What do you want your business valuation to look like in that 10-year or so period? And then that gives us a starting point. That gives us like the kind of like the North Star for, hey, here is where I want to go. And it just changes things. Going from, I want to grow the business, to I'm really crystal clear about here's where we're going to be 10 years from now. And then that gives us the ability to say, okay, great. So now we can put together the strategy to actually get there. So I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, and something that a lot of people don't do.
No, I agree completely. It's just struck me, Brian, as we're talking there, that you and I are talking about really basic stuff here. We're talking, let me give a caveat. We're talking about really basic stuff that most people find it really hard to do. Something as simple as knowing where you want to go. It's if you've got a destination, you can plan a route to the destination, right?
Yes.
And freeing yourself so that you do what only you can do. These are actually really basic things, and it's not just MSPs, all business owners the world over really
Absolutely.
struggle with these things. And you go and read books like The E-Myth Revisited and Built to Sell, both of which are exceptionally good books on this very subject. They're slightly different takes of the same potential solution to the problem, and this is a massive thing. Let's talk about what you do to help MSPs then. So you obviously have this incredible expansive experience. What do you do when you're working with MSP owners now? I mean, coaching is a very big word. It can involve lots of different things. So how do you typically help people?
Certainly, yes. So typically, it's one-on-one with the owner of the MSP, and what's a little bit unique is that when you hear about coaches in the kind of MSP ecosystem, most everybody has kind of like they're maybe an ops coach or a sales coach or those kind of things, and they have a program for you to follow. And so, in mine is much more bespoke. I work exactly with the owner on what they need right now. I dive deep with them into not only the business, but also how does your business affect your personal life? Are you working to live or living to work, right? And a lot more of those kind of things. And so it's really tailored for exactly what you as the owner need right now. Where do you need to grow in your leadership? Where do you need to grow, or what do you need to do in your company in order to set that vision? And then, so we look at vision, we look at strategy to get there, and then we look at execution day in, day out. What I find a lot is that as you're moving from that, 3, 5, 7 employees up to 10 or, 10, 12, 15, is that you move from technologist to leader. And if you want to scale your company, you have to make that transition from being the guru, the tech guru, to being an amazing recruiter and an amazing leader, an amazing vision caster, and somebody who can get people on the same page as you and where your company is going, and somebody who can inspire and all those kind of things. So I help owners also make that transition as well into really what they need in order to be able to scale their business. So those are just like some of the high level things that we go through.
That's really cool. Thank you. So tell us about the resource that you've got available and what's the best way for MSPs to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a free resource. It's the MSP Momentum Quick Start Guide. And really, it actually starts by talking a lot about what we've been talking about here. So thinking through your vision, strategy, execution, and kind of, goes into some more details of kind of a framework that I've picked up over the years. So if you want to download that, you can just go to discovery.brianhoppe.com, and that's available there. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, just search Brian Hoppe, should show up right there in the front, and also brianhoppe.com if people can reach me there as well.
Paul Green's
MSP Marketing
Podcast. This week's
recommended book.
I'm Chad Lauterbach, founder and CEO of B-Structure Technology Group. The book I would recommend is The Obstacle is the Way by my favorite author, Ryan Holiday. It's been used by NFL teams, all sorts of sports athletes and businesses around the world. It is not a business book. I'm an amateur philosopher, and he is a philosopher as well. Stoic philosophy has really helped me manage the stress of business, but specifically as it relates to marketing and the obstacles of the way, we had a lot of failed opportunities, and viewing those failures and obstacles as opportunities, as the way forward, not a block, was really a key for me to open up finding the right thing that worked for me in marketing.
Coming up next week.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kevin Gazzara, and I have found a way quantitatively to identify how to keep your people, how to retain them, and it won't cost you a dime. Listen to Paul's podcast to figure out how to do that.
On top of that interview with Kevin, we are going to talk about the best way that you can market to a vertical. I'll tell you exactly what you need and exactly how to implement it. Join me next Tuesday and have a very profitable week in your MSP.
Made in the UK.
For MSPs around the world.
Paul Green's MSP
MSP Marketing Podcast.